and I'm 41 years old. Actually, today is my birthday.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. And my background, basically, I graduated in food science at the University of Milan back to 2003. And after graduation, I worked for 1 year for the university, because 2004 was the last year where in Italy the military service was mandatory. So I needed a work to avoid it. And as soon as I managed to avoid the military service, I moved to London, which is still one of my favorite cities in the world. And at that time, I was really passionate about beer, but I was really moving to just to make something different, make an experience abroad. So I was really ready to make every single job that was offered to me. And I was very lucky because the first job I got was Fuller's Brewery, which at that time was one of the four breweries in town. Now it's probably more than 100 in London. And I spent a bit more than a year there, working as a lab technician. Then moved back to Italy in 2006. I worked for a couple of breweries, bad ones, where I learned. But actually, I learned a lot. I learned how not to run a company, and it's been really helpful to set up my own one. And the second brewery where I was working, I met Andrea, who was my business partner. So at a certain point, we just quit of that job and we started to talk on our project. That was pretty much the summer of 2009. And it took a bit more than a year to have the brewery running. So we started brewing as Brewfist in November 2010. So that's the brief history. So this year, this November will be the 10th anniversary of the brewery.
Oh, wow. And do you have family there where you're located?
I have family. I recently split from my wife. That was just last October. So I was born in Lodi, which is the bigger town in the area, around 50,000 people. And I've been with my now ex-wife for a long time. Basically, we moved together to London, and we just recently split. So she's still in Lodi with my son Simone, who is to be 5 years old in June. And I just after I moved to Codogno, so last October I moved to Codogno. So not the perfect timing, because obviously then we after 4 months we've been the very center of the outbreak here in Italy. So that's been one of the hardest thing about this situation, that basically I couldn't see my son for over a month. First, because of the red zone around Codogno, and when the red zone around Codogno was handed, I still decided with my former wife to wait a couple of weeks. So I really saw for the first time in last week. And this is also all this kind of situation, parents that are separated or divorced, and they have to continue to see their sons and daughters.
Wow. Well, and you're at Codogno is where you're actually located, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, take us back here a few weeks or a couple of months or whatever it was, but tell us how this all got started. I mean, what your vivid memories of what's going on here.
We now know pretty much that probably the COVID-19 has been around since January at least. There was a big amount in bad pneumonia, but for whole January and at the first half of February, no one connected it to the Chinese virus. We were all pretending that the virus was just a Chinese thing. And basically it was February 21, I just woke up and I got a message from one of my employees. She was joking because she was homesick, and she was posting from a local newspaper. Then we had an infected guy here in Codogno, and she was like joking of the fate and telling us she was not her, she was not the infected one. And but at that time we really didn't get worried because I said, okay, just one. We already had a couple of Chinese tourists that they were positives, so they were still hospitalized in Rome at that time. We say, okay, one in Codogno. It's funny because it's not a big city, it's 15,000 people, but it's just one. And then obviously things climb up in just a matter of hours. So basically, by 2 p.m., we got order from the local authorities to shut the tap room, and by 6 p.m. we were red zone. Basically, in a matter of hours, we say, okay, we got patient one, then we got 5 patients, then we got 20, and it was probably around 50 by the end of the day. And so they decided to put a red zone around Codogno and 10 other cities, neighbors, basically. And that has been for 2 weeks. The first couple of days, it wasn't really, it was just a suggestion. So there was no checkpoints, there was no control by the police till Monday. And that was probably a mistake because obviously by the time they decided to create a red zone in Codogno, they shut all the activities. So even the supermarkets were closed for a few days. And they didn't put immediately the police to check the road. So all the people from the red zone went outside of the red zone to make shopping, to buy food and went to other supermarkets. So, but on Monday, the police arrived, police and the army. So we had 35 checkpoints all around the red zone. And for the very first days, it was impossible to pass through the checkpoint. Then obviously there was a lot of companies were complaining about the situation, and especially we have in the industrial area where the brewery is, there's a very big company, it's called MTA, and they supply parts to basically all the car manufacturers in Europe. So basically they were telling, if you shut us, all the car companies, they will be shut in 1 week because they will be without parts. So they've been the first company to have an authorization to resume the activities with just 10% of their regular employees. So they have 600 people working there, they were allowed to start with 60. And after they got authorized, we started to ask authorization for us as well. They rejected a couple, and then they authorized us to, just for me and my business partner, to go to the brewery and to make deliveries. So the second week in the red zone, we were able to do some deliveries. Actually, it was pretty a good week because everybody was, there was a lot of empathies from the rest of the country because we were the only red zone at that time. And there was also another very small red zone in Veneto, but that was just a small city called Codogno. So we got a lot of orders, and as soon as we were able to resume deliveries, we had like a lot of pallets of beer living in 3-4 days. So that was pretty good. And then by the end of the second week, we got to the 8th of March, and obviously by that time the situation was really, really, really bad all around Lombardy. And the virus was starting to spread in the other regions in the north. So they decided on the 8th of March to create a much bigger red zone. So it was the whole Lombardy plus 14 other provinces, some in Veneto, some in Piedmont, and some in central Italy. But again, what they did, they made the same mistake they made with the Codogno red zone. They announced that they were going to create a bigger red zone and they were going to shut a lot of companies and non-essential services, but they didn't try to block immediately the people. So at that time, obviously, there's a lot of people from the south of Italy working in the north, and especially in Milan. So it happened that it was a Saturday, and on Saturday night, there was literally hundreds of people jumping on a train and trying to go back home to the south. And actually, it was really stupid by the people because they were bringing the infections to the south. It was really stupid by their family in the south, letting them do it, because obviously all these guys, some of them, they were definitely infected and they were flying home. And it took a bit to to realize what was really happening. Also because after a few days, they decided to make the whole country a red zone. And again, there was a lot of people trying to escape to the south and go back to their families. And that has been probably I think it was the 12th of March. So it's been only 4 days the Lombardy red zone, because straight after they realized that the problem was just not the north anymore. So it was the whole country. Obviously, it is by far still more severe in the north. And what happened to us basically is, while we had just our small red zone, at the end of the second weeks, you could feel the things were improving. I live in the very center of Codogno, and for the first 10 days, I'm not exaggerating, it was, you could hear an ambulance every 20 minutes. And obviously we are talking about a 15,000 people city. You could feel we were in trouble, and there was a lot of infected. And by the end of the second week, numbers was really slowing down. I was just here Saturday and Sunday, and at a certain point I just realized, oh, I didn't hear an ambulance for the last 5-6 hours. That must mean something. And obviously when the red zone around Codogno was removed and we were put in a bigger red zone, the numbers started to increase again. Because obviously, also because at that time, most of the companies, they were still open. Even now, most of the companies are still open. They've calculated that 40% of the companies are still open now. Because obviously, you cannot shut the country. You cannot shut the country when the problem is everywhere, because basically you cannot stop the food producers, because we need them. Otherwise, we want to have food in the supermarket. You cannot pretend someone from abroad helping you, because everybody is in this situation. And but the quarantine was working. Obviously, doing a quarantine with just 11 cities, 50,000 people total, with police and checkpoints, is something. Doing it on the whole country is much more complicated. And obviously, Italians are probably not well known in the world to respect rules. So it took a while to let people understand. It took a while to let people understand that, yeah, running is good for your health, but if everybody goes out for running and then you have 100 runners in the same place, maybe in a public park, that's not good. And so I would say that now people are they finally got the situation. Obviously, there's still someone trying to be smarter than everybody else, but now it's really, people are respecting the rules. They just go outside for supermarkets or for working if they're allowed to do it, but everyone is staying home if it's not really necessary to go out. And that's fundamental, because obviously numbers are still up and down, and it's very hard to understand what is happening, because obviously we don't have the possibility to make tests for everybody, which obviously it could give much better results and much easier to understand. Here they're just making tests when people are already in a complicated situation. They're already struggling to breathe. So the numbers we're getting now, they seem to go down, but we're not really sure. But by far they made probably the biggest mistake they made is they didn't create immediately a red zone in the Bergamo region, which now is by far the most complicated. I guess you have seen the image of the military trucks bringing coffins outside of the region. Over there, they say that there are around 1,000 dead people in the area, but there's a lot of people who died and wasn't even hospitalized. Maybe whole people who died at home, alone, and maybe those died for the virus, because of the virus, but they are not counted as a virus victim. So I would say that the numbers are, in every country, are much bigger than what we are, what we are told, because obviously no one is really testing the whole population. We were not prepared to this situation. And obviously the Lombardy health system is one of the best in Italy for sure, probably in Europe, but it was something too big to handle. I don't think that any country can handle a situation like this. Everybody in 1-2 weeks will be in the same situation where Lombardy is now. I mean, Spain is even worse than now. Their infections are climbing much more quicker than Italy. US already you overtook us with infections, and I think Germany, France, UK, sooner or later they will get to the point. Obviously, some countries are probably more prepared. For sure, the Germans are more prepared, but France, UK, I think they will be in the same situation. New York looks like it to be worse than Lombardy, and we were not prepared. No one was prepared for this. So that's the only thing we learned for sure from this situation.
Well, you bring up all kinds of questions for me. Back you were talking about patient one, so they feel that was in your town, correct?
Yeah, patient one was in town. Was my business partner knows him pretty well, and some of my employees they know him. He was a customer of our tap room. So obviously, when his identity was revealed, there was one of our waitress was swearing that he came just a few days before to our tap room. We couldn't find really any proof of it, so maybe she was just getting too nervous about the situation. But he's definitely been in our tap room as well. But actually, this is a pretty good news, because I think this week he was sent home from the hospital. So now he's feeling much better. He's been hospitalized for 1 month in Pavia. I think he was treated at that time. The main cure was with the HIV drugs. So it was treated with drugs intended to treat HIV. And 10 days ago, he started to breathe on his own again, and now I guess he's home, also because his wife is waiting a baby, so I think it's due in 1 month. She was positive as well, but the baby, she is fine, and apparently the baby is fine. And unfortunately, the day he was released by the hospital, his father died because of the virus. So obviously, it's something that is really touching families, from sons to parents to grandparents. No one is really safe. I know you read the article, the interview I gave to the journal. That's the main lie that has been pushed by the media and the social media as well, that the young people are safe. They are not safe. We are not safe. I'm 40. I'm not safe. Obviously, if I'm 80, I'm probably more at risk. That's for sure. But there's not. It's not an absolute truth that if you're 40, you can take the virus and survive easily. We got a lot of on national newspaper, a lot of people in their 40s that were interviewed with masks, ventilators, and it can really infect anyone. So everyone must be smart and avoid social contact, stay home as much as possible, and wait for the situation to get better. That's the only thing we can do so far.
Well, had this gentleman traveled, do you know, or do they have any information as to where he may have originally contracted the disease?
It's very hard to understand. I think that maybe when the pandemic is over, they will be able to trace all the DNA and of the virus and have a better situation. But we are still calling him patient 1. Probably it's been patient 1,000, because we know that the virus has been in the area for much more than just a month. So obviously he is a guy. He had a lot of social activity, so he could have taken from everywhere. We really don't know. It's hard to understand. So far, I mean, what they're telling us that patient zero might be someone from Germany, from Bavaria. That's what has been in the paper for some weeks. But again, I guess that the virus has been in Germany and all around Europe for months now. So I guess it will take a lot of time really to trace everything back and realize when this started and when this arrived to Europe.
And that's what we're hearing here too. It's like it's been around much longer than we realized until it finally got identified. So I can understand where it would be so difficult. But your employees and you are knowing that were in the vicinity of this gentleman, but everyone's well thus far?
Absolutely, everyone's well, and all our families are fine. So we really. I don't know anybody who's been infected even if there's been a lot of them in town. Obviously, I've been working in Codogno for the last 10 years, but I've been living here for 6 months only. So basically, my family here is my company and my employees, and fortunately, all of them have been in a good shape so far.
Great. Well, if you can, kind of describe. You're the eyes on the ground. You're seeing out there firsthand what it was like and what it's like now. Can you? Because I always use the word surreal to explain what we're going through, and it has nothing to compare with yours, though.
It has been surreal. I'll always remember the first day of Red Zone, so not the 21st, but the 22nd. So it was a Saturday, and you have to stay home, supermarkets are closed, nothing is open, just a few shops in town. So I literally have a grocery just on the other side of the road. So I could see on the grocery that there were no customers, so I just went down, bought some fruit and veggies, and then I decided to make a little walk in Codogno, because I'm literally 200 meters from the main square, and there was nobody. No, I was the only one around walking. It really looked like, I Am Legend, Will Smith, and all these kind of things. It was like, where's everybody? Everybody was home, was shut. And Sunday as well, completely shut. The only thing, I spent the whole Sunday at home, the only thing I could hear was the ambulances. There was no cars around, no people, no voices. I was just alone, maybe sitting in front of my computer, and ambulances. Then on Monday, obviously, things started to be a bit more normal. Some people were in the streets going out to buy food. So obviously, they were making queues outside of every single shop. Everybody was wearing a mask, and at that time it was really looking surreal. Now is the way we are living now, and probably the way we are living for many months more. So we are not really paying attention anymore to it. Everybody is still wearing a mask, keeping distance, making queues out of shops. There's always queue out of the supermarkets, so only a certain amount of people are allowed to be in the markets at the same time. This is our normality, and we have to accept it. But it's been the very first days has been surreal, and also because so many. We just arrived to the point that they made a cut. Everything that was before was stopped. So, for example, I wear contact lenses, and I was finishing the lenses I had here at home, and I had a delivery coming from a lenses from shop online, and obviously they couldn't deliver the lenses to me because I was in the red zone, so no trucks and no deliveries were allowed to get in those days. So I had to reschedule the delivery, have the lenses sent to my parents in Lodi. And then I met with my dad at a checkpoint, so I could just, say hello to him from 50 meters distance. Basically, he left the lenses to a policeman. The policeman came and gave me the lenses. And obviously, it was something small and stupid, but even at that time where we were allowed to resume deliveries, we were not just allowed to put beer on a truck, and then the truck was allowed to leave the red zone and go somewhere else to deliver. But we were also allowed to give beer to our local customers, but everything had to be done at a checkpoint. So we had to go to the checkpoint with the truck, leave the beer in a place, go away, and then the customers from the other side were allowed by the police to take the beer and bring them to their van, and then they were able to leave the checkpoint. It's been something like this for 10 days. There's also been, some people making funny videos of it, people having maybe pizza delivered from a pizzeria that was just outside of the red zone, delivered at a checkpoint for people inside of the red zone, or people just playing kind of tennis just at a checkpoint, so from one in the red zone and one outside of the red zone. But the people has been, after the very first couple of days, it was a total shock for everybody. Then people totally understood the situation, because everybody realized, okay, this is not just one guy who was infected. This has been going up and going up and climbing and climbing. Obviously, the local hospital was shut immediately. The emergency room was shut immediately because they realized that could have been places where people got infected, because patient one went through and in at the emergency room 2 times in a couple of days. And but then people got used to it. And when the red zone was handed, we got a very nice and touching letter from a policeman that was coming from another part of Italy, because obviously we didn't have the numbers of police and army that was needed to check to do all the checkpoints. So they had to send police from other parts of the country, and we got this very nice letter. And this policeman was really spending good words for the people of Codogno, because we all realized the whole situation. So we all made the quarantine in the best way possible. No one would really complain at the checkpoints. There was also a lot of people, maybe living close to the checkpoints, bringing coffee and hot drinks to the police. So it's been something that happened suddenly, but people, especially in this area, has been really, really good about it. So they immediately understood the situation, and now we are veterans, so we're probably an example for the rest of the country.
Well, now you had mentioned that the local hospital is closed. I mean, what are they doing if people are ill? I mean, what's happening?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
You had mentioned that the local hospital had been closed there in Codogno.
Yeah.
But what are they doing if people are sick?
The emergency room has been closed, so there's still probably people inside who has been suffering from other disease. And what they decide pretty much to do immediately in Lombardy, they decided to take the hospitals we have now, and this hospital will be only COVID-19 hospital. So, for example, Lodi Hospital now is a COVID-19 hospital. So basically, they only have COVID-19. And the same for the Crema Hospital and another one in the Bergamo region. And so basically, it's a bad time to get sick now. You have to avoid, and that's also why, obviously, there was a lot of arguments about the people going outside for running, not only because they can maybe at the very end get close together in a park or somewhere else, but also maybe if you go outside running or you do some sport activities and you get injured and you need hospital. Well, I wouldn't like to go in an hospital that maybe there's COVID-19 around just because I fractured my leg running. It's better stay home and trying to avoid all kind of injuries and really avoid to get sick, because it's not a good time to need health assistance. Especially the very first days, it was really impossible to get through the 118, the emergency number, because there was so much people calling for the virus. If you really need any other kind of assistance, if you had a stroke, if you had a heart attack, you could have been easily died over there, because maybe it could take 1 hour for the number to get back to you, because obviously the situation was crazy. Everybody was trying to have information, and that's why obviously by the time they organize things properly, they create special numbers, and now things are back to normality. But again, it's not a good time to need health assistance, so it's better to avoid injuries, and it's better to avoid to get sick, because it can get worse if you get in the wrong hospital at the wrong time.
Well, in your area specifically, what in terms of the fatalities, what are the numbers that you're hearing now?
Ooh, numbers are really big, but probably that's part of the reason of that is because the numbers are wrong. I mean, obviously we know that the numbers of people who died for the COVID-19, we are probably underestimating people who died without getting hospitalized. So nowadays, I think we are around 6,000 people officially died for COVID-19 in Italy. And probably I would say that in some parts of the country, especially the Bergamo region, their numbers are just 10-20% of the reality in terms of dead people. And what it looks like is, everybody's saying, okay, China, they got 1% fatality rate, and in Italy we have 10% fatality rate. Okay, obviously we should see if these Chinese numbers are good for sure, because everybody's trying, to hide things at this time. And not only China, everybody's trying to make numbers probably better than what they really are. And at the same time, here we have 10%. That probably means that the numbers of that is already underestimated, but probably the number of people infected is hugely underestimated. That's why we have such a high fatality rate, because probably we are talking about 80,000 people officially infected and 6,000-7,000 officially died, but probably we're talking about a bit more of officially died and much more infected. So sure. I guess that the fatality rate is the same pretty much everywhere. We are just calculating things. Everybody's doing numbers in their own way, so that it's very hard to compare the situation from different countries. Germany, they got 50,000 people officially infected and just 100 fatalities. That's not possible. How can you understand that? I mean, unless they got a very good strain of the virus, but it's the same stuff all around Europe. I can be so lower than anybody else.
Right. Well, I know when I spoke with Maurizio earlier in the week, he was talking about the situation in Cremona, where it was so many deaths and those types of things, no formal funerals, just ambulances. What similar experiences in Codogno?
It's everywhere, I guess. I mean, all the COVID-19 patients, the procedure, I think now is pretty standard. They let you bring a couple of pajamas and a cell phone and a charger. That's all they let you bring to the hospital. And after you are hospitalized, you see your family if you survive. If you die, you won't see anybody, so you'll die alone in your bed. Obviously, it's very hard also because you have a lot of people in their 70s and 80s dying without their families around. But it's the only way to trying to slow down the whole situation. You cannot have just families going to the hospital, and obviously there's no official funerals. Everybody is. No one gets buried, so you just get a box with ashes at the very end of the process. Even the funeral services are just, especially in the Bergamo area and Brescia, are really struggling to cope with the number of deaths they have. And again, one of the main things that we really struggle to give face mask and gloves to doctors, to nurses, to the funeral services. So now we have a lot of doctors that are infected. Nowadays, I heard it before, we have 4,000 nurses infected all around the country. and even the people at the funeral services are getting infected. And say, if we all get sick, there won't be anybody to take care of all these people dying, and it's the whole situation, especially there, Bergamo, has been really horrible. That was I started to tell you before. The main mistake they've done is not to close not to create a red zone around Nembro and Alzano, were two small towns, pretty much the same size of Codogno, but over there things got much worse than Codogno in just a matter of days. And for sure there was a lot of pressure by local industry. There's a lot of very big companies over there, and they put a lot of pressure not to close them. And there was a terrible mistake, because over there has been a total tragedy. There's been, families just wiped away by the virus. I just read before, for 3 brothers, pretty much all in their 70s, 80s, all 3 died in a matter of a few days, all gone. Maybe you have grandparents, grandmother, and granddaddy, both gone in just a matter of days, and you don't see them. You just get the ashes after a few days. You don't have a chance to bury them. Over there has been really bad, and probably now they start to realize that let them play. There was a big football match, Atalanta, which is the Bergamo team, versus Valencia for the Football Champions League, European Champions League, and Atalanta is always been a very small team. So over the last couple of years they've been incredibly good. So and they managed to get to the final matches of the Champions League. So for them was a huge event. That's why they couldn't play in their own stadium, because it's too small in Bergamo. So they were authorized to play at San Siro in Milan, which is obviously is much bigger. It's the stadium where AC Milan and Inter play. So at that time, it was just a few days, it was mid of February, 40,000 people from Bergamo, they all went to Milan for the match, and now they are starting to realize that was an event where the virus spread all over the people, because there was definitely people infected over there, and 40,000 at the stadium, not great. So over there, they've been really struggling. That's why all the apps we're getting now is going mainly in that region, even Cremona. Now we got 150 doctors who flew from Cuba to have the Italians, and now they are assigned to the Crema hospital. We got doctors from Russia, and they are taking care of the Bergamo region. Nowadays we got 30 doctors and nurses who came from Albania, and again they are going to the Bergamo region, because over there it's been really bad. Here, because obviously the province here is not as big as Bergamo, we don't have so many companies, we're not so heavily industrialized as over there, and because of the original red zone, we manage immediately to keep the numbers down. Obviously, we have the 2 weeks in the red zone where the numbers were climbing, but that was due of the people infected in the previous 2 weeks, where nobody knew the virus was in town. But then numbers started to go down with the red zone. Then they raised a bit again after we were put in the bigger red zone, but the numbers in Lodi are probably the Lodi in the province, and in Codogno are probably the best in Lombardy now in terms of rate of an increase of the infections. But Bergamo and Brescia has been literally crazy. Now it looks like that finally they got to the peak over there, but it's been totally out of control. They really struggle.
Just a couple more, and I won't take up much more of your time. But how would you describe a typical day for you? I know you're getting used to this situation, but how is it? How do you manage and cope?
Honestly, I'm glad that, obviously, I've been joking a lot about moving to Codogno and living in Lodi for many years, then moving to Codogno, and after a few months I got in the middle of of the virus, and I got shot into the red zone. But honestly, it's been much better to be here than being in Lodi, because at least, even in the very original red zone, I could go to work, because obviously I was going there alone, on my own, just myself, without any employees around, so no risks of infection. So basically, I work a lot over this time, because I was the only one going to the brewery. And so I was doing a lot of things in, production, quality control, and obviously you cannot just stop a brewery with a snap. Obviously, we have beer fermenting, we have to do controls, check, maintenance. So I was really working 10 hours a day, and that really helped a lot to fill my time, because otherwise, staying home all day alone for 40 days now, it would have been complicated. So now I'm still now that I'm finally seeing my son again. For example, tomorrow, Monday, I'm going to Lodi to pick up my son. He will be with me till Wednesday. Then on Wednesday, I bring him back to his mother, and then from Thursday to Sunday, I work. Maybe I go a couple of days at the brewery, then I work in front of my laptop. I'm glad I have a company to take care of, even if the company is shut. So, but otherwise, obviously, I'm in constant touch with our employees, and sometimes are just, obviously, they're writing us in a funny way. Please let me come at the brewery. I want to do something. I can even clean the toilets if you want, but I want to do something. And I was like, no, guys, sorry, you have to stay home and respect the rules, even if formally we are authorized, because with the last law was from 1 week ago. They made a huge list of the companies that are considered to be essential, and the companies they have to stay closed because they are not essential. And the drink industry is considered to be essential. Obviously, there's been a huge rise in beer consumption, because all these people, they are just home, and they go to the supermarkets, they grab a lot of beer, sit in front of the television. So the beer industry is allowed to operate, but at the same time, obviously, this is good for the macro, for people like Heineken or this kind of big corporation, because they are selling a lot of beer to the supermarkets now. But for us craft brewers, pretty much none of us work with the distribution. So with the supermarkets, we all sell our beers to pubs, bars, and restaurants, and all of them are closed. And they will probably be the last activity to open, because they are the activities where people are just in constant touch. And so formally, we can bring people to work, but we don't have customers to serve. So the only thing we are really doing now is home deliveries. It's doing pretty well, because obviously customers are not they're not allowed to go to the pubs, because the pubs are closed, but they still want to have a good beer. So, for example, tomorrow, before going to collect my son in Lodi, I will just have 7-8 customers to bring cases of beer in the area. And we're doing the same pretty much all around Codogno. We are driving to the customers. Otherwise, we are shipping to every place in Italy. That's the only really sales we can do now.
Is it stressful though? I mean, I know you're staying busy, but it's got to wear on you.
It is stressful, honestly. I was having an interview with an Italian radio yesterday, and obviously we were talking about the fact that I'm a really a calm guy. I rarely go out of my mind, so it's stressful, but I try to stay positive. We have to stay positive, especially me and Andrea, my business partner, for our employees. We cannot be the first. We have to lead them. We have to be the leaders. So we have to stay positive, and in order to let them stay positive. But obviously it's stressful, because we've been in this situation for 40 days now, and we're still in the middle of the whole bureaucracy to get, obviously, what happens now that we can claim in Italy is called cassa integrazione. So basically a part of the employee's salaries will be paid by the central state. And it is something that for the original red zone, so for the 11 cities in the original red zone, was allowed immediately by the central government. But then you have to get through the whole bureaucracy, procedures, filling papers, having people authorizing you, and we are still in the middle of the process. So it's been more than a month now, and we are still not officially authorized to have this kind of help from the state. Basically, all the mortgages from the banks are going to be suspended. But again, a lot of very long procedures, and in this way, Italy is a very complicated country because we could die under tons of papers in this situation. We got. It would have been much easier to make just few rules very clear, quick for everybody, because otherwise the whole bureaucratic system is a madness. For example, obviously we have the brewery employees and we have the taproom employees, but the company is one. Everything is under the same name, but the taproom employees and the brewery employees, they have two different way of having their salaries paid by the state. So we have to make two different procedures, different rules, and every day there's a new ruling coming out, erasing what was stated the day before, and it's constantly, following new rules, new procedures. And even our consultants are going crazy because every day there's something new coming out. We'll get to the point where everything will be done and fixed, but it could have been a bit easier than what has been. So that would have been great to keep us positive,
Sure.
not just bury us under tons of papers and bureaucracy.
And just one last one. We hear a lot of stories over here of people getting out on their balconies or something in the evening and
Yeah.
singing. Are you witnessing any of that?
No, not anymore. Obviously, it was something really nice, spontaneous, but obviously, the very first days, people are emotionally involved. They want to, stay together. It's something new. They go outside on the balcony, national anthem, but what we're seeing now that people are getting angry, especially the south of Italy is a very different country, north to south, and obviously also in terms of wellness and personal richness. The north is still doing pretty well, but in the south it is a social bomb. If they don't get money rapidly down there's people who is really struggling to put something in to feed their families and their kids, and they have to be quick, because we are starting to see people getting pretty nervous, trying to go to the supermarkets and get out without paying, pretending they don't have money, and it's something that where after 1 month down, no one is singing anymore. Everybody is starting to get stressed, worried, and obviously if you don't have money and you have maybe kids to feed, it's not an ideal situation. So the central government must be smart and tackle the situation before it gets over control.
Right.